what a great sort of great chat that was,
Yeah,
boys.
yeah, that was awesome. Thank you, Nick.
I always learn so much from everybody who comes on, especially when they're. I mean, if they're building stuff, as we've discussed before, I don't know one end of a soldering iron from the other. So people who build their own stuff just blows my mind, especially when they
don't
then
touch
go.
the hot end. That's all.
Oh, one end gets hot. Oh yeah, okay. One end gets hot. Good to know.
Yeah.
I'll remember.
I run my soldering iron at 350 Celsius.
You can adjust it.
Yeah, you can.
Man, this is it's over my head.
I don't know. I freaking burned myself with a glue gun. So
yeah, I'm with you, Neil. I'm with you, brother. Blows my mind. Oh yeah, I just casually just built some preamps for my console. Yeah, of course. It's what people do.
Why not?
Why not?
Hi, and welcome to Sound Discussion. Each episode, we discuss a music topic which we have all had first-hand experience with. This will be anything from getting started, recording, playing live, mixing, mastering, and everything in between. Most episodes, we will have a special guest to bring their professional experience to the discussion. So, let's get started. Well, welcome back, guys. Another episode, another month. Here we go. Are you guys ready?
Yeah, ready.
My equipment said otherwise, but I think I'm ready.
Yeah, we should just crack on.
Okay. Well, let's hope
it.
this records. If you're hearing this, everything turned out okay. Well, so today's guest is somebody that Dan Millis introduced me to. That was really cool of him. Thank you, Dan. And if you haven't listened to Dan's episode, I believe it is season 2, episode 7. That might be wrong, but I'll put the link in the description. Go back and listen to Dan's episode. So today's guest comes to us from Dan Millis, and once I learned how this guy operates, I knew we had to have him on here. He is a tone chaser in every sense of the word, not just buying gear, but he builds it. He brings it into existence where it didn't exist before.
Yeah, I mean, when I build my own mic pre's from scratch is like a casual part of your conversation. You're playing a different game to everybody else, certainly to me. And if that mindset carries through everything, recording, live sound, tape machines, all of it, I mean, yeah, it's above and beyond.
Yeah, and he's also lived on both sides of the glass in a very real way. DIY touring, running live sound, owning a studio in New York City, which means his...
Yeah.
Huh?
I mean, what? Owning a studio in New York City.
Exactly.
Owning a studio in New York City, which means his perspective isn't theoretical. It's tested. It's, and likely repaired and soldered back together at 2 a.m.,
Yeah, exactly. We're talking about circuit bending, circuit building, repair work, custom work, but also songwriting. Nick is a prolific songwriter, and I'm really curious how that technical brain feeds his creativity instead of getting in the way, because I'm victim of that.
Yeah, man, that's the danger, isn't it? You can chase tone forever and never finish anything. Just keep chasing it, but somehow he manages to do both, so the sound and releasing music. He's getting it done.
And we want to hear how all that connects. The DIY touring, the engineering, the studio life, the mistakes, the wins, and how building your own tools changes the way you hear music.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. So today we're joined by Nick Vivid, artist, engineer, circuit builder, studio owner, DIY touring manager, and somebody who clearly believes that if the gear you want doesn't exist, you're just going to have to make it yourself. Everyone, please welcome Nick Vivid to the Sound Discussion podcast.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Rick.
Woo. Wow. That's a heck of an intro. Thank you.
I hope that's all correct. I put my own...
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah.
My research
It's
together.
like when I hear it back, it's like, yeah, I've done all that stuff. Yeah, it's true.
That's wild,
Cool.
man.
It's cool.
Well, thank you once again to Dan for this introduction. I'm so glad that he connected us with you. So if you would, please
likewise
give everybody a rundown of who you are and what brought you to this point.
Nick Vivid, musician, grew up a kid who loved music and just fell in love with rock and roll and the idea of rock stars and the whole kind of dream of the life, everything about it. I love every aspect of it. So as I grew up, I got into electronics. I got into songwriting pretty much at the same time. I think I was writing songs before I could play an instrument. I would, when I was 11, my first instrument was the drums, and I would just make up albums in my head. Like I would write the songs and orchestrate them and arrange them in my head, and then I would like conceptualize albums, and then I would play the drums to those albums, and I'd be like, okay, good, that's like 22 and a half minutes. So then the other side of the album would be another, and I was conceptualizing full length albums,
On vinyl, no less. 'Cause you
in
had to
my
flip
mind.
the record over.
Yeah. I was like conceptualizing side A and side B,
That's
and you got to
rad.
have the ballad as the second song on side B.
Yeah.
And this is, all these different kind of things I was learning about music and the way music worked. And then on the technical side, I kind of that came along a little later. I always had an interest in it, but I didn't know I had an actual like talent for it until a little later on. My father was a former studio engineer, DJ, who was a DJ on a soul station in my hometown of Buffalo, New York, in the late '60s, early '70s, called WBLK. And his persona, his name was Bradley J. Cool, and he so he always like had soul music playing in the house and all that kind of stuff, and he got out of the radio business when I was born. He was out of it, but he got into he's always a technician, so he like repaired TVs and VCRs for a living growing up, and got me into that trade, and I learned how to repair. you know I would fix like 10 VCRs a day at a shop back in the midnight late 90s and stuff. So I always got like into the technical aspect of it, learning how to use a soldering iron and a multimeter and all that fun stuff. So, and then I would be in bands, and we would start touring and playing gigs, and I just I just loved the whole thing. And then I moved to New York City, and thought I was just going to be a rock star. And so I kind of put all the other stuff on hold, and I thought, oh, I'm going to get the manager, and I'm just going to make it on my music and all this stuff. And I realized pretty early on how impossible it was going to be without me just taking everything I knew how to do and going for it. Um, and so I started a label, and I started repairing my own amplifiers, and I would take my amps to get fixed, and then I'd realize I can't afford this, or I'd take them to get modded, "Oh, can you try some different tubes in this thing?" And then I'd be like, I got to learn how to swap the tubes myself, or I'm gonna run out of money here. I got to learn how to the reverb tank dies, and I'm like, I got to I got to learn how to change my own reverb tanks. This isn't going to last very long. And so everything was built on kind of the sense of desperation. Like, I'm going to run out of money if, like, nobody's going to put me in a recording studio. I got to learn how to make my own records. Nobody's going to, send my albums off to radio stations. I better learn how to be my own press agent. Nobody's knocking on Nick Vivid's door to help him.
Yeah,
right.
Nobody's still knocking on Nick Vivid's door to help him. And so it was mostly out of necessity. I would love to, I'm not going to even say that. It's like, oh, I would love to just sit back and let the money roll. No, I'm not that kind of person. I know people like that, and they never go anywhere. And I think it's a testament to the work ethic that I just kind of had instilled in me, or just always had, where I realized also that I just love the process. I love every aspect of it. I love recording. I love being on stage performing. I love songwriting. I love tinkering around with gear and modifying things and changing out tubes on amplifiers and seeing how things change sound. I love writing press releases. I love contacting radio stations. I don't love calling clubs, but I like calling clubs, trying to book gigs. I even have an old '81 Chevy van that breaks down all the time. That's my touring van. And I like learning how to repair that thing when it breaks down, and changing out the carburetor on it, when it needs to, and rebuilding the starter and when it needs it. And it's literally just it's been a life of necessity and fumbling around and trying to figure out how to make it all, how to just live the life that I want to live. And luckily I enjoy all the things that I'm doing, and it's not making me a lot of money, but it's saving me a ton of money.
Yeah.
and and I and it's so, it's so grassroots and so um cottage industry. And you mentioned me owning a recording studio at one point in Manhattan. It was just the next thing to do. I was doing live sound at a club for a number of years in Brooklyn called the Trash Bar, and I mixed like 2,000 bands there. And at that point, it was like, well, I've been there, done that. Let me try taking my hand at recording bands for a living. And so I opened up this little, analog studio on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and I ran that for a few years, and I fixed guitar amps for people, and I set up guitars for people. And I was like, well, maybe I enjoy this, and then I realized, well, I didn't really love that, and the place got flooded out one day, and I was like, well, you know what, like, I'm just going to do something else now. I had been there, done that with that thing. But I always loved the stuff, and I always loved doing the stuff. Yeah, anyway, that's kind of what got me to this point. I'm right now, I'm not playing in any bands. I'm a solo artist, and I've been for about 10 years. And I perform shows. Again, another thing that I do is create my own live show. So I have my own lights and my own visuals, and I bring my own backdrop and my own projector, and I have all the audio tracks ready to go and all my vocal cues set up with the echoes and all that stuff, all MIDI controlled. And I just take my show with me on the road, and me and my girlfriend, we get in the van and we go wherever we need to go to play. And it's a self-contained unit. And then when I'm not on the road, I'm writing music and recording. And it's just, that's the thing. So
Wow.
that's kind of it sounds like a lot, but in a weird way, my life's never been more simple because it comes down to this. I want to make music and I want to play shows. And whatever I got to do that, and I enjoy all the other stuff that comes along with it, thankfully. I enjoy the work.
Yeah.
I love the gig.
Yeah.
I love the work and I love the gig. And I know a lot of people that I played in bands with are like, oh, I just want to be a rock star. I just want to be on stage, and I just want to be famous, or I just want to have, can somebody else write the songs, like
Well,
it
man,
sounds,
I mean,
and for me, it's all about just loving the gig
yeah.
so much that it's everything that comes along with it is a gift in a weird way. That's how I look at it. And so, yeah, I do whatever I got to do with it because it's just what I love to do. Anyway, I hope that kind of explains some of it. But
Yeah. I can't think of
Very
anything
cool.
more punk rock than that. Like, that is the punk rock ethos, the DIY, the get it done however you can, the broken down van, the shows, the equipment, your
Yeah.
it's the punk rock ethos. And to that matter, the people that want to be famous and they just want to be a rock star and get on stage and do their thing and then get off stage and not have to do any of the work, the people that they want to be like that do that now, they did what you're doing. They did all the work. They ground themselves down until they got to that point where they could have everyone doing all the stuff for them, and all they had to do was show up, shred, and leave. Right?
Yeah. And you guys know, it's like doing what we do is it's sacrifice.
Yeah,
There's
100%.
there's sacrifice, It's like me and a good buddy of mine were talking about this, and like something I ended up saying to him that I was like, oh, that's going to stick with me for a while. It was, it's not about what, it's about what you're willing to give up to have it. It's about what you're will, is it a priority, and being working in music and having your life be music comes with sacrifice and comes with trade-offs, and I'm totally fine with whatever trade-offs I needed to make in order to make this the life I live.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's much easier ways to earn a living. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh yeah. Yeah, owning a recording studio is not easy. Trying to get clients and trying to call bands and be like, "Hey, you guys want to record?" It's, "Oh, hey, you guys, need an amp fixed?" Or anything, just
Yeah.
like, knocking on, just pounding the pavement. And it's something that kind of like, yeah, you realize that you're pounding the pavement's going to be a thing for the rest of your life at some point. But even my favorite bands who have any kind of longevity at all have pounding the pavement in their DNA, even the major label ones.
Yeah.
The real ones who are still around 30, 40 years later. I mean, they still get up every day. A good buddy of mine is always like, yeah, do you think Paul McCartney wakes up and, what if somebody said to Paul McCartney one day, "I'm sorry, Paul, but you're going to just have to take the trillions of dollars and sit at home and never make music again. Sorry." And Paul McCartney would be like, "No, I'd rather give up all the money and just to be able to keep working."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
absolutely.
he wouldn't be able to live with himself if he couldn't work, so it's, you got to love it. You got to love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those. You only have to look at. I mean, I think it was last year, wasn't it, where Aerosmith said they're no longer touring because Steven Tyler just said he can't anymore. And you go, no, but you have. I mean, you have put the time in, my friend. It's like,
Yeah. But
you
yet
know,
he's still recording, he
yeah,
can't, he'll still do one-off appearances. He can't get off that stage.
yeah.
You can't take, you just don't quit, you know. Once you're making music, if this is who you are, you never stop. You never stop
Yeah,
being that
exactly.
person.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so you do your own live shows, right?
Mhm.
So and you said that you have your own lighting and your own backing tracks and things like that. What program do you use?
I use for everything, including all my studio stuff and my live show, I use Reaper.
Okay.
Which is I started using it years ago because I had a cheap computer that didn't have a lot of power, and yet it didn't use any resources at all. It was just so lightweight, and it had a lot of features, and I could record like 10 tracks on it, and it wouldn't fizzle out on me on playback. And so I've been using it ever since, and they keep adding great features, and it's got great MIDI, and it's great editing, and um yeah, so I'm a proud Reaper user. Been using that for
Is there
years.
a
And
specific DMX program that you use or
what's the free one? Freestyler, I think.
Freestyler? Okay.
Freestyler DMX software, and then there's like a free MIDI to DMX software called Loop BE. And that's like a free like MIDI to DMX thing. And then there's like 8 channels in Freestyler that you can kind of map to. So I've got like, 4 lights that like do tilts and pans and in like various colors. And then I set up all the presets with a MIDI keyboard, and I'm able to like, oh, I like that color. And I actually like play along with the song, and I'll record it. And then I'll do the same with the vocal. I'll hit the thing, and I'll record it once, and then I play it back, and it's set to go. So yeah. Yeah, that's a Freestyler DMX, and hook it in through Loop BE and the MIDI function on Reaper. And yeah, and then you just map it to a MIDI notes on a keyboard.
Very
Amazing.
cool.
Very clever.
Yeah.
I was looking at your website the other day, and yeah, I mean, when you tour, you really tour. The number of dates on there was like impressive.
Oh, thanks. I feel like I don't do it nearly enough. I want to do a lot more than I currently do. It's financial purely and time, but when I can get out there and do it, I go out and do it. But yeah, it's awesome, and I just love being on the road, and I love touring.
Yeah, and you got dates coming up for the new album. They look like
Well, I'll be coming out probably in June. I'll be doing U.S. dates, and might have some UK stuff and European stuff on the horizon after that. And then yeah, that's kind of the focus would be the UK, Europe, and America. again on the next one.
Nice.
And yeah, hopefully before the end of the year, all that'll have taken place. We'll see. You know how life was it life's what happens while you're busy making plans. So
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
I make a lot of
Absolutely.
plans, but I don't make a lot of promises because
Well, I'll definitely keep my eye open for that. If you get to the UK, I'll definitely
yeah, I would love to
definitely
do
come
it.
along. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I would love to do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, so you and I had a sort of pre-conversation. You told me about a few things. Let's talk a little bit about the equipment that you make, the equipment that
Okay.
you build to make your
Okay.
sounds, right? So you could go to the store, you could get preamps, you could get things,
Sure.
but you prefer, when it makes sense, you prefer to build them or modify what you need. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of, let's see here. I've got this console. It started with my console that my quest for sonic recording, my interest in that really took place when I bought this console that I have, which is an old Yamaha console. I was in a band and I was like, let's build our own studio. And we had a loft in Brooklyn that we all lived in. And I was like, I'm gonna go buy this console. It was like in Rochester, New York. It was $500, and it was old Yamaha from the '80s. And people were like, "Oh, the mic pre's are really good on it." I was like, "Great, mic pre's awesome."
I'll need those.
Yeah.
They'll be good.
I'll need those. That sounds vintage mic pre's. Somebody said it sounded like a Neve. I was like, "Well, that's cool. Fine, okay, whatever that means." It says Neve. That's great. Let's go get it. So I got it and it was cool and it was great. And then it was like, oh, turns out like there's these things in here called op amps and you can change them to different op amps and it will change the sound. And you can get these things called transformers and you can plug them into the inserts and it'll add like this irony kind of sound and make it sound more professional. And I was just started getting like fascinated with like things you could do with the budget that I had to change the sound of what I got to make it sound like something that was worth twice as much. And I was like, I just kind of got fascinated with this concept. And so I would just start auditioning op amps in the different channels of the board. And it was like, oh, well, it's got 4558s, but if you put a 5532 in, they sound even cooler. And if you put a JRC 5532 in, it sounds different than a Texas Instruments 5532 and a different than a Signetics 5532. And then if you go through all the different 50, and it's like, well, this one sounds great with kick drum. This one sounds great on vocals. And this one sounds great on guitar. So we'll make this a guitar channel. We'll make this a kick drum channel. We'll make this one a bass channel. And so I kind of like made up the board like that. And then I was like trying to experiment with like all these different kinds of like transformers and things like that. So it kind of, the idea of modding my own gear kind of grew from that. And then it was like my audio mixer is a old M Audio Profire 2626. And I still use it. I got a Black Lion audio micro clock on it and record everything at 96K, 24-bit, usual stuff. But it's another thing where it's like, it's got 45, I think it was 4560 op amps. Basically 4558, 4560, that style of op amp is considered very general purpose. It won't start acting weird. It in any circuit you put it in, it'll behave correctly. It'll be fine for anybody who buys this at Guitar Center. And
Vanilla.
so vanilla.
Very vanilla. Yeah.
Very vanilla, very run of the mill, fine. It works fine. And if that, and I was like listening to it, and it's like, maybe I can make this thing sound better. So what I do, I buy surface mount 5532 op amps and I change out the whole thing. And I'm like, I like the sound of it better now. And then I'm tinkering with the board and now I'm trying to get the board and I've got a couple records that I'm play through, my favorite records. And I'm like, oh, this album sounds cooler with this combo of op amps than this other combo of op amps. I'm like, now my board sounds with my speakers and everything sounds the coolest with my favorite records. Now I have a system that I like a lot. So that kind of just grew into me being fascinated with consoles. And then it's like, oh, you find out like wow, I have all these records and they're my favorite sounding records. And it turned out they were all recorded at the same studio or similarly at the same type of console, which turns out my favorite of all time was the Helios. And the old Type 69 console, which is used at Musicland Studios in Munich. Led Zeppelin did Presence on it. That's like one of my favorite sounding records. People say, it's not their favorite Led Zeppelin record, but it's totally my favorite Led Zeppelin record. And I think it just sounds amazing. Like, I would be happy if every record I ever put out sounded like that album. I just think everything about it sounds super cool. And then I was like, well, now you can buy, 500 series preamps, and they make these like official Type 69 Helios, preamps that you can buy for the 500 series. I'm like, well, I can, like $1,800 a pop. And I'm like, well, I could buy like two. I could buy like two of those maybe with, a budget, and then I could have those. I had those at my old studio, and it's like, okay, I'll put the kick and snare through those. I'll put the vocal through those, and then I could build a couple API channels and throw those in there. And now you're like, you to build like 8 channels or a 6-channel lunchbox, you're putting like $3-4 grand into this thing, to build this, lunchbox. And then I'm gonna give you guys a link to check out in a second. So come on. Anyway, I'm doing this for years, and I've been experimenting with years. And then a friend of mine and I were talking about, like, I'd say 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, and we were both just talking about like old consoles we loved. And his favorite was the Olympic. Which is like a one-of-a-kind console. Turns out it was Dick Swettenham who built the Helios. It was his first console, was the Olympic. And basically the main difference between the Olympic and the Helios consoles that came after is that the Olympic ran on early germanium transistors and the Helios ran on silicon transistors. Basically the main difference between the two circuits. And, if you have like a 2520 API op amp, similar architecture.
Right.
Similar kind of thing with the line amps. So we were just talking about it, and then I saw these guys put out these 500 series Olympic boxes that were supposed to be exact recreations, and they actually showed a photo and a schematic of the op amp itself. And it just so happened that a week before I was Googling API 2520 op amp. If you Google API 2520 op amp PDF, there's a website called Steam Powered Radio that will bring up a PDF of the API 2520 op amp. And the first page is just specs, nothing too interesting. But the second page has circuit specifications. The very first thing at the top is a microphone preamplifier circuit, including the API 2520. And I said, you know what? I could build an Olympic channel.
There you go.
Hey.
And then 4 down from that is a balanced transformerless amplifier. And I'm like, I could build an Olympic line amp to act as an insert on my board and turn my board into an Olympic if I had enough channels of it. And then I was like looking at the germanium transistors that they use, and I'm like, they're the exact same as these Russian germaniums that you can get from the Ukraine that everybody's been building like fuzz boxes and fuzz faces with. You can get them for like pennies on the dollar. Yeah, for guitar pedals. Same exact thing. So I bought like a ton of these off eBay, and I just built like a ton of channels of Olympic and Helios. And for the Helios one, you had to buy like new old stock op amps, transistors. And I just built a bunch of lines, and then I took these old Shure microphone. They're like the old ones from Woodstock. They're like 4 channels of Shure mic preamps in them, and like they're great for DIY boxes. So you can get them like on eBay for like, I don't know, a couple, like $20-$30, $40, maybe they're more now, but at the time they weren't that expensive. And you could just take them apart and use the volume controls in them and put your own circuit in and build your own, get like a little a dual power supply off Amazon for like $5 and plug a 16-volt AC wall wart into it, add some capacitors to it. Next thing you know, you have a $2,000 mic preamp. there's guys selling that mic preamp for like $3,000. It includes the EQ section, but I don't need the EQ section if I'm recording vocals. I don't need the EQ section if I'm recording guitars. I literally need, the only thing you can't build yourself with the mic preamp is the transformers.
Right.
And those are really tough to come by. So, they'll cost you a couple $100 for the transformer. But if you're just building line amps and you want to just run your music through it on playback, you could build 8 channels of that, no problem with no transformer. So literally for like $10, $10 worth of parts, I can build a channel of Olympic, vintage 1969 sounding Olympic. As a matter of fact, my voice is going through the Helios right now, but if I click on this, you'll hear a little click. 1 second. Sorry about that. Now I'm talking to you through the Olympic, which is a little less low end. I don't know if you can notice it. It's a little more mid-rangey, but not so much. But it's a little smoother and the lows are a little smoother. So I'm talking to you through germanium microphone transformers, preamps right there, and then back to the Helios right there. So yeah, it's all about like, oh my God, I can build this thing I can turn my studio into the Olympic studio from 1969 that Led Zeppelin recorded Led Zeppelin 1 on. I could literally basically turn like 90% there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And like everybody can do it. You gotta just need a soldering iron and a little and enough determination to make it happen. And it's like you just build your own stuff. And then also on top of that, and building guitar pedals and modding keyboards from the 80s that don't to have MIDI in them that shouldn't have MIDI in them, and all sorts of fun stuff. So
guitar pedal seems to be the cool thing that I see. I mean, I'm a drummer, like, as you were starting out, a drummer and mastering engineer, and the thing I hear a lot at the minute is build your own guitar pedals. The sort of JHS sort of pushed it. I know they sell JHS pedals, but they've done a big thing of you don't have to buy a clon, you can just make one. That's
just Google fuzz face, and there's like 5 million, and you could build. There's like it's 5 parts. There's like nothing to it. It's like and they sell originals for like I guess the original that Hendrix played through is worth some money, but if you just want to build one for the heck of it, it's like you get pretty much the same thing. Just get some germanium transistors and go to town.
Yeah. And even if you don't want to have the signature circular, enclosure, you could put it in a square box. And
I don't care about any of that. You get a little plastic box from Amazon or something, just throw cardboard box is fine, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Or couldn't you got like one of the like a different pedal, like take a Behringer, cheap $10 pedal and then just rip out the guts and then you gotta
sacrificial enclosure. Yeah, absolutely.
Anything you want to do. Yeah.
I've seen people
put, nothing against Behringer.
I've seen people put like DIY small guitar amps in like those peppermint tin boxes. Forget the brand, but yeah, you could put stuff in anything, just about.
I took like an old cassette player from the 80s, just a little handheld cassette player with a built-in speaker and just turned it into an amplifier. Just took the cassette feature out of it and just had the microphone go straight to the speaker. And you just listen, crank it up, and then you got built-in distortion, or use it as a preamp into an amp.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the other thing is too, your albums won't sound like anybody else's.
Yeah.
It's a way to guarantee you are gonna have a unique sound.
Yeah.
It's like I know what it's gonna sound like when I plug a Les Paul into a Marshall. Yeah. I know what that's gonna do. I don't know what this is gonna do. You know what I mean? And that's what's interesting about. Like, let me mess around with this stuff and plug it in and see what happens. I mean, it could sound horrible, or it could be really neat for one specific thing, and that's cool too. But it's all about like, well, I don't know what's gonna happen if I do this, and I think that's the intriguing part for me. And plus, it's like if you're on a budget, but you know how to solder and you got some parts sitting around, you can build it. And it's like $5 to build it. It's like,
Yeah.
and it sounds vintage, and they,
Yeah.
it sounds cool.
And you get
I
that
think
that pride of like finishing something and making it yourself,
Building it,
right? Like,
yeah.
I did
you
it
know, that
myself.
accomplishment.
Yeah, it's great. It's so much fun. So
I think you've just touched on something really interesting there that I was thinking about the other day. I saw a YouTube video by Rhett Scholl. I don't know if everyone knows Rhett Scholl.
Yeah.
And he was reviewing a famous guitarist's new plugin that has all the famous guitarists' amps. So you can plug your guitar in and your sound will be like his sound. And my immediate thought was, why do you want to sound like someone else?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why, when you've written your song, why is your thought, oh, I know what I want? It's not, but I want Joe Perry from Aerosmith's guitar sound. Why? He's got Aerosmith's guitar sound, and you just said your album, your music won't sound like anyone else if you've made your own amp or made your own pedals.
Yeah.
It's just the entire opposite way of thinking about it. So many people think, I want the Metallica black drum sound.
Mhm.
Why? They did that. Why are you trying to?
Well,
why are you trying to do that?
Man,
Well,
hold on. I got the perfect answer for you, Ben. It's because everybody wants a shortcut. Everybody wants to be the rock star standing on stage that shreds and walks off and doesn't have to put any effort into actually building what their persona is and putting in the work.
Well, there's
Yeah,
also
maybe.
the argument, the other side of it, there's a legitimate, like, I'm just curious how that person made that sound, and there's a genuine, but I think for a finished product, yeah. I mean, as a mastering engineer, do you have clients who are like, oh, it doesn't sound enough like this current record, or it doesn't sound enough like this? Do you get that kind of comparison?
I have
Yeah.
had people say. I mean, I've had people send me their album and then say, "Can you EQ balance it against Nickelback?" And it's like, no, go for it. I'm not your mastering engineer if that's what you want. Nothing against Nickelback. That's not a slight on Nick, but that I'm not going to take your song and then master it and then go, and how do I make it sound like Nickelback? Unless it is sounding like Nickelback already, if you know what I mean.
Right.
But so, there are times where I'm like, I'm not the mastering engineer you want for that, if that's what you want. But yeah, I mean, they have done. I have had clients who say, "Oh, it does. Your master. I was hoping it would sound more like XYZ," and it's like, well, you don't sound like them.
That's part of the reason I got out of the studio business. Was some of the bands. I remember one band in particular wasn't happy with how the session came out because they didn't sound like, I didn't make them sound like Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, did they sound like Led Zeppelin in the room?
No. They sounded like I recorded the band that they were.
Yeah.
And you're not going to argue with them on that. You're never going to win that argument. It's totally fair. They have every right to feel about their art how they want to feel about it. But for me personally, I like the idea of seeing what happens as opposed to trying to emulate something as the finished product. I like the idea of going, oh, how'd they get that sound? Let me see if I can tinker with that. But at the end of the day, I'm much more satisfied stumbling on something that emotionally hits me in a place that, I'm not EQing things because somebody else did it. I'm not EQing things to create the sound. I'm EQing things because I'm like, well, if I do this, there's an emotional resonance with me with this EQ sound. With this compressor, with this thing, there's an emotional resonance for me that I feel nails what my vision is so much more. And I think most people don't look at it like that. They look at it like, make it sound like Nickelback. We'll be good.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and also like, well, maybe somebody wants to sound more like this band or that band, or wants to capture this particular sound or that particular sound, because they'll feel an imposter if they don't, or they don't feel that that's professional if they don't sound like, oh God, please don't. Can we stop saying Nickelback, please? Fucking hate that band. God damn. But anywho,
Their
like,
bank
some people will
balances
probably
will say you're wrong, by the way, Neil.
they can think that, that's fine. But anywho, like, but what I'm saying is, like, some people are like, oh, I need to get that vintage sound, or I need this sound specifically. And if I don't get this sound, I can't be considered like this doesn't sound professional to me or whatever. But really, like, you miss the whole point of being unique and being an artist and being you. And so I
Yeah.
really like that you do
Yeah,
that, Nick.
100%.
That's
Yeah, and there's a lot of fear around that,
Mhm.
right? Because people are afraid to. They see what's worked,
Yeah.
and they're afraid to not be something that's already worked. And unfortunately, the industry right now thrives on that.
Yeah.
There's a new band. I mean, when that Greta Van Fleet band came out, and everybody made the Led Zeppelin comparisons with them, it was like, but that's why they got hot. That's the Led Zeppelin comparison was the thing that people like. Was, oh, it's familiar.
Yeah. Comforting.
I forget that there's some new band that sounds like Led Zeppelin. Another new band.
Oh,
That's doing
really?
the exact. And like, I feel like Greta Van Fleet's like insulted. Like, hey, that's our gig.
There's only one Led Zeppelin ripoff band around here.
Hey, there's not room for two of us.
Yeah.
But it's another. The singer is wearing Robert Plant's open shirt with the jeans. Like, the whole thing is so, and it's like the industry promotes that. The industry rewards that.
That's interesting.
And if you're not, like, even on the indie level now, like, there's small labels that, like, let's say an indie noise or an indie garage rock band, they have their presentation and their album covers harken back to the MC5 in some way or something like that. There's always some reference to something that already happened once that somebody's a huge fan of, that is, again, if labels are just like, oh, I've seen this before, I know this works, I know how to market this because this has already worked once. And so it's just, everybody's just so, they're just grabbing the lowest hanging fruit. And so,
it's that paying homage, right? Like, it's
well,
the
paying homage is one thing, but being a direct copy of something because it's already worked before.
Yeah.
It's like if this band, it's like I listen to Greta Van Fleet and I go, you've only ever heard one band in your entire life, the way you sound, and it's like, if I heard the mix of 3 different bands in their sound, I'd be like, oh, that's interesting, but I don't even hear that.
Yeah.
I hear one band
so
in
you're
their
saying,
entire sound.
like they have that sound because they think that they'll be most successful being just that copy or just that rip.
I think the industry rewards that thinking.
Yeah.
I think the industry rewards people who go, I want to sound exactly like this other thing that's already worked once, and everybody knows what to do with it then. The PR guy knows what to do with it. The marketing guy knows what to do with it. The people involved in the whole thing. Yeah, and it's a shame because there was a time, I believe, when trying to be different than everybody around you was rewarded. When especially when there's like scenes like, the early punk scene or whatever. I wasn't there, but I can imagine that, somebody looked at the Sex Pistols and said, oh, that's cool. What can I do that's different from them? Instead of going, oh, the Sex Pistols, they're really cool. How can we be exactly like them?
I think a lot of that, quite a lot of that, from my perspective, is driven by the labels who
absolutely,
it's business. They don't like risk. They don't like
going
out on a limb. So if they've got Sabrina Carpenter and you come along with the next sounds like Sabrina Carpenter, they go, safe, I can sell that. That's nice and easy. Everybody will go with it. The bit that's really interesting is the flip side of that, though, isn't it? Is that all the biggest bands in history, the ones that the record labels have made the most money off, don't sound like anyone else.
No, they're unique. They're fucking unique.
Yeah.
And it's weird, isn't it? It's weird how the industry rewards the labels for playing it safe, going with what they know, and yet all the biggest artists that we can ever think of, even if, the Prince, Madonna, you don't have to go back to the 70s, even sort of 80s, 90s, even Coldplay don't sound like anyone but Coldplay. And yet industry is kind of always going down the safe route. but that's not where actually they make the biggest money.
I mean, you could probably say Coldplay doesn't sound like anyone else but Coldplay with their first 2 records. But maybe the current version of Coldplay does kind of sound like a lot of the other radio pop that's out there. You know, it's like,
Chris Martin's just doing whatever he wants now, isn't he?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
he's earned the right.
When you're at Chris Martin's level, yeah, you call the shots at that point. But I wonder how much of those huge bands that have become iconic, who didn't sound like anyone else, the person or persons at the label or the marketing company were risk takers, right? They were the ones breaking the mold because they were the ones that said, "Oh, this Nirvana record, this is going to be something. Let's put our money behind this." Because it would be so easy for a record label to say about Nevermind, "Nah, it's too different. It doesn't. There's nothing familiar about this. There's nothing groundbreaking." Or we don't want to take the risk on something that might be groundbreaking. But somebody then says, this might be something. Let's take the risk.
Yeah. But let's also talk about Nirvana. Like, okay, so Nevermind came out. It was a huge fucking hit, right? And then the sequel to that, In Utero, the fucking record companies didn't even want anything to do with it at first. When they first heard it, they were like, "Oh no, you gotta go back and re-record this. You gotta go back and."
Well, they wanted a Nevermind Part 2.
Yeah.
And that's not what it was.
They wanted it safe. Yeah. At that point, they saw the success, and then they went into safe mode.
They're still giving them crap about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the biggest band in the world, and yet and everything they touch turns to gold, and yet the record label's like, I don't know about this.
We think from our boardroom sitting around a table, we think that doesn't sound right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we don't think that sounds as commercial as the last album that was a hit. And we're afraid that this one will not equally sell. That last one sold 50 million. We need to sell 51 this time.
Yeah.
Or it's not as good. And that, it's a real problem. The last part I wanted to add to that I was just thinking of too is that unfortunately, and I think it's much, I hate to use the Nickelback thing again, but back to Ben's Nickelback thing about that band requesting the EQ. They're not, I don't know if they're on a label or not, but I know indie bands who are not even on labels now are thinking like that. It's like so pervasive that even when there's nothing on the line, people are opting for the safe route, even when there's nothing on the line. And that's sad to me because I think a lot of great creativity is just being stifled on purpose. Like, you know, it's one thing to be in your first band and like, oh, these are my favorite bands. I want to sound like them. Cool. Awesome. And eventually you build your own, hopefully you build your own style eventually. Right. But yeah, I just know so many people, even on the indie level, who not even doing, not even signed, have no pressure to conform to anything, opting to conform to some kind of preconceived success in order to give themselves the best chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The best chance is just go and record your music as you hear it. Have it sound like you. Use your equipment. Have it sound like you, and that's how it works best. Don't try and be anyone else.
I've never been happy when I hear that idea.
No.
Yeah, I love it when I hear bands that are like, we just do our own thing. Like take the Deftones. Like they came on the scene, they had their own style, and listen to every album after that. They have changed so much, but like it's their own. They
still always sound like them though. They're
they
always
do.
sounding like them.
They do, but they're always pushing the envelope of what they want to do. As opposed to what maybe the record company would be. Oh, this would be a good single or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. The nice thing about Deftones is they can't help but sound like Deftones, which is great.
But it's also unique. It's very unique. Like you got Stephen Carpenter, that rocking guitar. You've got Chino with those breathy vocals, and
he's always singing about being on fire.
Something about the lung or
every album there's some reference to being on fire, I think, on every Deftones record. I don't think he's missed one.
Good man. It's good to have a recurring theme. Help people Help
Yeah.
people along.
For the true fans that are paying attention.
Yeah.
So,
Like, this guy
Nick,
likes being on fire.
tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about like what goes into making your own music. So the equipment, you build that's cool. But then when is it time to switch off the technical brain and really just dive into the creative side? Because that can be really hard to separate.
I just wait for like little ideas to come to me in my head. Typically, sometimes I'll just pick up a guitar or a keyboard and I'll just start playing around, see if some chord progression strikes me, and then I just record everything on my phone. Sometimes I'll want to like just create a beat, and I'll just go into Reaper and I'll just start putting designing a drum track with
Yeah.
samples. It depends on the mood. Sometimes I'm intentionally trying to write and intentionally trying to come up with something, and then other times I just let it kind of come to me, and I'm like, oh, I heard this idea in my head, and I'll just record it in my voice recorder. And then at some point I just start kind of getting the itch to make another album, and then it's like I start conceptualizing. Oh, what could the cover art look like? What could the theme be? What could the color scheme be? What could I do here that I haven't done before? Like, when I was, I think I was mentioning when I was like 11 or 12, I was making records before I could play an instrument. And I was conceptualizing the song titles and the running orders. I'm like, I haven't made an album like that where I went from back to front like that since then. I was like, I think it would be really cool if like I've got some neat ideas musically here, but like I think it'd be kind of neat to like make an album where I just come up with song titles first. And I'm like, this is, if you turn the record over and in the record bin, and you're like, oh, these song titles look really cool.
Yeah.
I think that'd be kind of neat.
That's a
I'm
cool
like,
idea.
And so it's like, I'm like always thinking in those terms. Like, I just want to keep myself excited. I think even with the technical side of it, it's about keeping myself excited, because I'm like, I want to know what my records could sound like if I had this gear, and I want to know what my records could sound like if I did it this way, and it's I just see them as kind of working hand in hand. I'll just, and then I have it in my mind a certain way. In my mind, it sounds right a certain way, and I'll record it, and hopefully technically I get it close to that, and I just let the songs tell me when they're done. I'll record until the songs tell me they're done. I've had I've had moments where I just be like, I think that's it. I don't know what else I could do to make that better. And that's usually when it's over. And then going back to my association with Dan Millis, he's been my mastering engineer for 10 years now, and we've done 4 records together. And every time I give it to him, I always give him a new challenge. And I'm like, okay, listen, and usually like what he does, I'm like, well, I don't like that. The first album he did for me, I remember he's a big fan of the L2, the Pro L2.
Yeah.
And he uses that for his limiting. And I don't think I'm speaking out of school by saying anything about that. I think he's mentioned it even on your show when he's talking to you.
He has,
before.
yeah.
So I don't want to be giving away his secrets, but
No.
anyway, so he gave the album back to me, and I remember listening to it, and I go, Dan, I love it, because it's like, for me, it's like I'm okay with it being loud, because obviously if somebody plays my record in a coffee shop or something like that next to another thing, I'd like it to be as loud as the other things. I get it. I understand loudness wars. I understand the whole debate with it. And I understand the necessity for some aspect of that in our current situation here, in order to at least exist on the same plane with other people when you're having your music played in a coffee shop on a playlist. So, so Dan did all that stuff to it, and he gave it back to me, and I was like, this. And then I listened to the whole album, and I called him, and I was like, I love it, but for some reason, it makes me want to fall asleep after the 7th song. I just can't listen to it anymore. And my ears can't take it anymore. It's something about it is too much. I don't know what it is. And he was like, okay, cool, let's figure it out. And we figured out between me and him how he especially figured out there was some kind of setting on the Pro L that didn't really change anything in terms of the sonics, but for some reason he gave it back to me. It's like, it's great now. I can listen to the whole thing. And it was like a read ahead setting.
Yeah.
And it was like, it just made the transients not pump in a weird way that just made my ears hurt. And it was like, he was like, oh, I just did this setting change. I'm like, it's great now.
Gosh,
and
how
it's
did he
like,
know what to find? That's wild.
I don't know, but he was like, it was brilliant because it's like, it's technically, I guess, brick walled, but it doesn't sound brick walled to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very sensitive to that kind of stuff. So it's like, there's things I need my records to sound like in order to, you know, but it's like, again, you know, I just kind of know when it's done. Okay, like, can you do this, this, and this? And it's like, and then he gets it, and like, the last album, I was like, he did the last revision for me. I'm like, there's one word that pops out of the mix on track 4. Just one, the first syllable of one word. Can you just tuck that one word in just a little bit? And he's like, yeah, I can do that. And so he did it. And I was like, okay, it's done. We're good. And it's like, you know, it's at some point, again, I feel like my music's done when, and I don't even know if that was your original question, but my music I find is done when I find there's nothing left to fix.
Yeah.
Well,
you know,
that's a great thing for everyone to hear, is because projects can go on forever. There's always something that you could tweak. You learn new things, be like, oh, I learned this new thing. Let me go try it on this record that I have in progress, right? And like, it'll never get done. And I fall victim to that too. I have songs that I wrote 2-3 years ago that are in some stage of near completion, and I still haven't finished them and released them. And I should, and I need to do that. But lots of people are in that same boat. And
yeah.
You know, at some point you just got to be like, this is done. It is done. It is done. It's done.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing, you know, there's so many of us that are perfectionists.
Yeah.
And we're afraid to release anything less than some kind of weird ideal that doesn't exist. And I think for me, it's always been, I got to let that go and look at the idea that the emotional content of the music is coming across in a way that it was originally intended.
Yeah.
And it's speaking, you know, like I'm listening to it and it's striking me on those levels that I wanted it to strike me on when I first came up with it in my mind. That tells me it's done.
Yeah.
Because, and I think that exists all the way through the process, whether it's songwriting or mixing. Because somebody asked me the other day, do I master on headphones or on speakers? And I said, I have to master on speakers, always. Mm-hmm. Because as soon as I put headphones on, I lose the picture and I can only hear the little bits of detail. So I'm not saying headphones aren't right. If you think there's a problem, headphones are great. You can isolate what you listen, but you lose the overall sort of seascape of what that song is supposed to be sounding like. And I think that's, you know, that's probably the same when you're recording it, right? I don't do any recording at all, but you can get fixated, as you've said, you know, as we've touched on, fixated on that technical aspect, and you lose the musicality of what you're trying to record.
Yeah, I've got
the same with mixing.
I've got like, I don't know, 350 kick drum samples. You know?
Yeah.
it's like, and those are all the ones I like out of a much larger pool that already auditioned all those. And I'm like, oh, these are my 350 go-tos.
350.
Oh, probably less than that. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but it feels like that
lot.
many.
Yeah.
But at some point I just go through and I go, well, this one sounds like the one I heard in my head.
Yeah, and that's it, right? And then
that's it.
That's done. Now move on.
That sounds like the one I heard in my head. That sounds like the one I had in my vision. That sounds like the one that's making it come across the way I originally planned. Yeah, that's totally.
And I think the other side to that too is, especially with the analog equipment aspect of recording, and maybe with the samples too, I imagine that you commit to things on the way in. You don't leave things in MIDI format or, you know, leave them open to tweaking later, right? You commit your sound.
Sometimes, but yeah, I'll record and then I'll EQ and compress last. I sometimes record with EQ, but very rarely do I record with any EQ and compression. Everything just, unless it's like already a VST in the MIDI VST in the box already or something like that. But if it's something I'm recording through an amp, like I've got my go-to microphones. I literally only use 2 microphones. I double track my voice with an old vintage Unidyne 57, which sound they're different than current 57s. If you want to know what a good 57 sounds like, get one that was made before 1981. Because they switched out the capsule. They used to be what was it? They used to be copper. Now they're aluminum.
Okay. Really?
Yeah,
Didn't
the
know
old one, the old copper ones, and you can get like an old 545. It's got the exact same diaphragm on it. But you got to get a vintage one. But yeah, so like I got that. That's my go-to there, and I've got some kind of, I don't even know what this thing is. Let me see. I think it's a Bear Dynamic. Got to put my light on it. It's a Bear Dynamic. Oh, M201.
Okay.
Which are like, popular for snare drums and stuff.
Yeah.
But I like how my voice sounds through it, and so I double track my vocals with those two, and then I go through my Helios and my and all my stuff with that, and then I'll with my homemade amps and stuff, I'll just use my 57 on everything, and I just like how it sounds. I have a friend who like auditions different. He loves his like cheap plastic Russian microphones. He's like, ooh, what will this one sound like? What will this one? And it's awesome. He does all these like really cool experiments with like crazy microphones that he finds. I found this microphone that no one's ever heard of before on eBay, and it was only $30. I'm going to try this out and record everything with it. I'm like, cool. For me, it's like I have 2 microphones. I use them on everything. I've tried a bunch of other ones, but I like these. I always keep coming back to these. I like my preamps. I keep that part simple because it's the sound I like, and I like it better than any. I'll try different things. I'll probably build a Neve channel at some point, and I'll probably build I want to try building like an MCI or a Flickinger channel at some point. But the truth is, I'm always going to come back to this. It's the sound I like. So yeah, I'm always just, that part is simple for me now, especially now that I built this stuff. I was building it all. Whoa, sorry. I was building it all during the last record. Now it's all built, and I just like it. I'm just going to use it.
Yeah.
So
That's less decisions you have to make,
Less decisions. Yeah. So that part makes the actual tracking process really easy because I'm not auditioning microphones and I'm not auditioning preamps. I'm literally I'm not even auditioning guitar amps. I've got 3 of them, and I'll just plug it through one. I'm like, oh, it sounds best through that one. Great, let's record that one. It's like I don't even, or I'll track multiple guitars through each one, and then I'll do a mix of all 3, or I'll just pick my favorite later when I'm mixing. I try not to overcomplicate the tracking process, especially with the amount of kick drums I have to choose from.
I was just about to say the thing that's going to trip you up is them kick
is the
drums,
drum
right?
sound. Yeah, the drum sound is probably the craziest part. Yeah.
Well, so let's go through a couple questions that we usually do here at the end of the episode. So we already know what your DAW of choice is. You use Reaper.
Mm-hmm.
Do you use any other sort of DAW or application alongside Reaper? Like, do you use 2 DAWs at all? Like maybe a Ableton or something like that for beats, or do you strictly stick to Reaper?
I'm just strictly Reaper. Yeah.
Okay.
I used Reason years ago on the side for some keyboard stuff, but mostly which I don't even know if that was really a DAW of any kind. But anyway, yeah, I just use Reaper.
Okay.
Nice.
What is your absolute? Well, I think there's 2 or 3 layers to this. So, what is your absolute studio tool? Whether it's a piece of hardware, a software, what's something that you cannot live without in the studio? Plug in.
It's tough. It's tough because all of this adds up to
Yeah.
my favorite thing, you know?
What's the one thing that if you had to give it all up, the one thing you would hang on to?
I would take my Helios mic pre's that I built. I would take those with me.
Okay.
Everything else I could replace. I don't know if I could replace those because of
There you go.
the transformers are
All
next
right.
to impossible to find.
Yeah.
So
And then the other side of that is when you're on the road, what is essential for you when you're on the road? You know, you got everything in the van and you're self-sufficient. What's, you know, if something weren't available, what do you need to have to make a show happen?
well, my laptop.
Okay.
For one, I mean, if I really had to, I mean, I even put a backup of the audio tracks on my phone. So God forbid I lose everything. I just give me a microphone and I'll karaoke to the backing tracks in an emergency. It's
Sure.
never come to that, but yeah, that's. I think that's, you know, just give me a microphone and you know, as long as I really, you know, the most important thing
Yeah.
is my stage clothes.
Yeah. Okay.
Great answer. What a good answer.
Yeah, I think that would be
Yeah.
the most important thing would be my stage clothes. Because as long as I can dance and look good and you can take some pictures and say you were there, nobody's going to remember what it sounded
It's a
like.
show. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I could still post the photos on Instagram and people be like, wow, that looks cool.
Nice.
Awesome.
And a final question. What was your first band and what was the band name?
My first band?
Yeah.
In elementary school, my first band was called Slither.
Slither.
And
That's one of
That's
the better
actually a
ones.
great name.
Yeah, I stole it from this guy who he didn't appreciate that I did that and made it my band name. But I was like, yeah, I'm gonna call my band Slither. He's like, that's my name. Yeah. Anyway, I was 13. I didn't know that you shouldn't steal other people's
sure.
ideas.
What I want to know is, when did everybody's first band have great names? Because when I was a kid, people's first bands had the worst names ever. I mean, how come everyone's got a cool name for their band?
I don't know. Was that my first band name I came up with? I think that was. I think my first band
not
when I was like a
terrible.
little kid was going to be called The Steps because we had these steps going down to our basement. And it was like, oh, you know, it was like me, my brother, and our couple of friends down the street. We're like, yeah, we're going to have a band. We're going to call it The Steps. And we're going to sit on the stairs of our basement and do our band photo on it. See, we're sitting on steps.
See, even
That's still actually a rad name.
It's still good. And you had the whole concept mapped out.
Yeah,
See?
yeah.
Yeah.
I like how it seems like in everything that you do, the function, the art precedes the visual, I should say. The visual components precede, and it seems in most cases, the audio part, because it helps inform. It seems like it helps inform what you're gonna do if you have the parameters to work within. A finish line is to sort of like, you know, the record's going to look like this. How does the sound fit into all of this?
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything is within the package, you know, it's like all complete. It has to all make sense together for me. And I'm again, you know, going back to what I said early on in this conversation, I'm excited by all those aspects of it. I like the idea of a visual informing the music, and I like the idea of the music informing a visual or an album title or a, you know, a concept or even a stage presentation, you know. So yeah, for me it always all works hand in hand. You know, my favorite art bands growing up all just made sense. You looked at them and you heard what they sounded like and it just made sense. You know, you listen to Bowie and then you saw Bowie on stage and you're like, that it makes sense that a guy who looks like that's going to sound like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, and that was when I was listening to your records. That was the very first, and I try not to make comparisons, but you know you can't help it. But that was the very first thing that came to my mind was like Ziggy Stardust, Bowie was this like personality that even just looking at the artwork of the record before I hit play, that personality just like came bursting through. And then as soon as I heard the music, I'm like, well, yeah, of course, that's what that sounds like.
Yeah, and thank you. That's the biggest compliment to me because that's always my goal is to make it all make sense.
Yeah.
You know, make it all like it looks like it sounds, and there's a consistency to the concept, and And when somebody, nobody's going to look at, anybody who knows who Nick Vivid is, hopefully on the next record, they're not going to be totally surprised, like what Neil was saying about the Deftones. Like it's going to sound like, hopefully it's going to sound like me, and people who are fans of my music are going to listen to it and be like, oh, this sounds like a Nick Vivid record. Cool. And that's like, for me, that's the dream, is to create a concept that can last for decades, that I can keep going with, that I never have to, and that is challenging enough artistically that I can always find new things to do within it. And luckily I have that kind of art form right now that is very free, but also has its, like, it makes everything I do kind of still fits within the parameters of what I feel I've created visually with my my entire being and my entire concept here. So, yeah, it means so much to me to have it work like that, and luckily it seems to.
That's cool. Awesome. So, where can people find out about you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, nickvivid.com is my website. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. I post semi-regularly on those, usually when I have a tour or a new album or something coming out. I'm not Mr. Social Media, but yeah, I'll do those things. And yeah, just nickvivid.com, and join my mailing list. If you like the music, join the mailing list, because I've got like 18,000 followers on Instagram, and I think the algorithm right now shows my posts to like 400 people.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
meta,
like,
you gotta pay for
yeah,
that.
it's like, it's so, yeah, they're like, hey, if you want to pay to become a verified badge member, we'll show your posts to more people. Like, they just come out and say it,
Yeah.
like, and it's like, just join. You know what? Just let's get back to mailing lists. Let's start. Let's start.
I agree.
Let's get back to mailing lists and old school.
I agree,
and
yeah.
give me your mailing address. I'll start sending out postcards again at some point. I miss the days when bands would send out postcards to let you know if they were on tour in your area. Those were fun days.
Or when they would make their own flyers and shit. And
or the fan clubs where you'd mail in, right? Like, that's rad.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking of even doing that at some point. I'm not big enough to have like a fan club, but I always thought, like, I would like to make like a regular newsletter, like a quarterly, about what I'm up to, what I'm working on, and like just mail it out to people. Like, if I was a fan of some band, I would love it if they did that kind of thing, So it's much cooler than posting on Instagram and hoping to God the people who want to see it are actually going to get to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, we have a small corner of the internet here, so, people check out Nick's website, nickvivid.com, and if he's on tour in your area, go check him out.
Yeah.
Please do.
Or
certainly shall do.
Buy a record. At the very least, go and listen to it where you listen to music, and give it a thumbs up and help out the algorithm. Yeah,
and thanks for having me on the show, guys. Like, I have friends I geek out with and talk gear with, but I've always wanted to do a podcast talking about gear and stuff, so this is a lot of fun.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, it's really cool. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Sound Discussion with our guest, Nick Vivid. Thank you, Nick, for hanging out with us today. Really appreciate your time. For all of you out there, be sure to go and check out Nick's work wherever you stream your music. And also, if he's coming into a town near you on his tour, be sure to check him out. Now, on to some other housekeeping stuff. We have some super exciting guests coming up in the next couple of months. I'm not going to spill the beans. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but I will tell you, if you want access to that episode a week early, go and sign up for our mailing list on our website, sounddiscussionpodcast.com/newsletter. You give us your email address and we will give you that next episode a week early. And trust me, the next episode next month, you do not want to miss this. So, be sure to sign up, get on our mailing list, get access to this episode a week early. It's going to be massive. It's going to be huge. We're super excited. Can't contain ourselves. Also, if you want to have some sweet Sound Discussion merch, head on over to our merch store, sounddiscussionpodcast.com/shop, and be sure to pick up a hat or a t-shirt. I think we got some like tote bags and all that other cool shit. So be sure to check it out. I guess that's it. We'll see you guys next month.
As long as I can dance and look good and you can take some pictures and say you were there, nobody's going to remember what it sounded like.